Well, hello again.
Hello.
We're back, and this is part 3 of our GPS to clarity. And this is another way that we can see that we have this inner guidance all the time, helping us to navigate life really effectively so that life is easier and less stressful. And so what we mean by that is that we can use our feelings to indicate where we're coming from. What if our feelings are there telling us where we're coming from and kind of indicating the road we're heading down, instead of what I've always done? My feelings mean I have to change my behavior. I've got to do something. What if it's more of an indicator where I'm coming from, where I'm headed if I keep going down this road, and use our feelings that way?
For me, it's great to see what's in the feeling, to lean into it, to see what the feeling may want to communicate to me. It's great to recognize that our feelings are there to teach us to open, not to create problems, although our stories around them create all kinds of problems.
Yeah, an example that I've seen in my life is that for years, when Connie would ask me to do something, and there was a certain tone in her voice, I would react. I would take it personally. I would take it as though she was criticizing me, judging me. I've got to do this. And because I heard it that way, all these feelings would come up. And it was like, oh, I've got to change the way I am. I've got to be neater, tidier, a better investor, something. I looked outside myself to changing my behavior as a way to improve our relationship. And what I've seen as we've begun to understand how our feelings aren't telling us so much about what's going on in our lives and how we need to manage our circumstances, but rather they're indicating where we're coming from and where we're headed. So as I've begun to lean into these feelings, it can still come up, and I'll hear a tone of voice and I'll notice what I'm doing. It's like, oh, I tense up. It's almost like I'm 6 years old again.
Wow.
And it's probably where it came from. Probably a parent said something in a certain tone of voice, and I related that to, I've done something wrong, therefore I need to change in order to ensure their love and caring for me, to keep the connection. So all these years of my life, including all these years with Connie, a certain tone of voice was associated with, I've done something wrong, and I would go into fix-it mode. And what does that do for our relationship?
Not good. I can testify to that.
So what I've found is as I've started to lean into it, some years ago, I started to lean into it. It was so fascinating because I began to see that if I was really willing to feel these feelings that were coming up, I began to see with more clarity that what she was asking really didn't necessarily have a lot of judgment in it. That what she was asking was just a common request. And with that, my mind began to settle down. It just made such a difference in how I related to her, because I was no longer feeling like I had to change myself. Or I guess the other part of that equation too is, if I got real justified in what I was doing that she was asking me to do something about, I would try to figure out a way to change her.
Yeah, we've both done that a lot.
Yeah, so either way, trying to change ourselves or change another person or our circumstances only maintains this sense of tension and difficulty in our lives. So as I started to lean into the feeling, I began to see, my goodness, this is just energy. This is energy in me that doesn't really mean I'm doing something wrong. It doesn't even mean she thinks I'm doing something wrong. But even if she does think I'm doing something wrong, if I can settle, I can see if I'm doing something wrong. it's not attached to my old childhood stuff anymore. And in that, I can either correct what I'm doing without it being all personal. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. I didn't realize I was doing that. Or I can apologize and say, oh, look what I did. Yeah, okay, I'll do my best not to do that anymore. So leaning in has helped me to see that the way I had that tone of voice hooked up in my mind put me down a road that did not lead to a real healthy relationship. So now I see when that feeling comes up, that's like my GPS is telling me where I'm coming from. And then I'm going down an old road that's probably not going to be as productive as you'd like.
Yeah, and for me, when I just feel what's there without any story around it, often it either moves very quickly or I see where that feeling originated, and then it moves quickly. And that seeing is wonderful because it allows me to open and move forward in my life.
Yeah, without the brakes on. It's like when I've got a story about I've done something wrong or they've done something wrong, I need to change, they need to change, it like puts the brakes on my life. My world gets small.
True.
So one way that we found that helps us to lean in and be able to experience, to feel these feelings without any thoughts, without the stories that we have about them, is to be curious. You know, looking at curiosity, I mean, think about what is curiosity really? For me, it's like this space that's just open, curious. I really want to know what's happening here. There are no labels. As soon as I start adding labels, it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this before, and this means that. That's no longer curious.
True.
I'm just already analyzing, categorizing, telling myself a story about it. So that idea of just getting curious, you know, an old feeling comes up, and you see we're going down an old road that hasn't been productive. Maybe just get curious and see if you can feel that feeling without any thoughts about it, without any labels, without what it means and what's going to happen next.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Curious is like being a little scientist without any conclusion, without any knowing, just open to feel it. And we don't need to be afraid of our feelings, but we only see that when we get curious and lean in. Then we can begin to see how they're not there to create difficulty. They're there to teach us to move forward and open.
Yeah, how we can look at the state of mind we're in so we can find a better state of mind, because when our mind is settled, that's where we find our best thinking. Yeah. And as you were talking about curiosity, I was realizing that for me, when I'm leaning into something, if I start trying to figure it out, then it's like me and my mind trying to figure it out, get it right. But when I'm curious, when I take all the stories and analysis away, that feeling or whatever I'm leaning into, that reveals something to me. Something comes to me.
Sure.
Instead of me figuring it out. Oh, this is what it is. Let's get it all categorized so I can feel okay. It's like, let it all go and see if something comes.
That's great.
That's been our experience. Hope that helps.
So play with it and see what you learn. You'll be surprised that feelings aren't there to taunt you or make things difficult. They're there to really serve you.
Yeah, they're not there to turn our lives into a nightmare, which can happen if we, get all scared by our thinking and our feelings. They're there just to tell us where we're coming from. They're there to, as a reflection, as a feedback about the state of mind, whether we're telling ourselves something true about who we really are and how life works or not.
Yeah. So I want to give you a recipe today that came from one of our clients, and it's so simple and so yummy. You take garbanzo beans and you soak them overnight, then you create whatever seasonings you enjoy in them. I used lemon and paprika and pepper and garlic powder. And then you bake them in the oven at 400 degrees for half an hour or 35 minutes. And you have cooked beans that are like crispy croutons. They're so good.
Yeah, we've been doing roasted chickpeas for quite a while and always loved them. But we had always started cooking the beans first and then roasting them, or we would just open a can of cooked beans and roast them. And so this takes a whole step out of it. And we like the texture and the taste better when we just soak overnight, and then we roast our chickpeas from dry chickpeas as opposed to using the pre-cooked out of a can.
Yeah, so give it a try. You'll be surprised.
Yeah, it was great.
See you soon.
Bye for now.